President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are neck and neck nationwide, according to a new Emerson College poll published yesterday, which finds that 46% of voters support Trump, while 45% are backing Biden and 8% are undecided ahead of the November 2024 presidential election. This comes as a Wall Street Journal poll from earlier this week found that Donald Trump is in fact leading Biden in 6 of the 7 key swing states. The poll shows Trump holding leads between 2 and 8 percentage points in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and North Carolina. Biden is leading Trump in Wisconsin by 3 percentage points. Meanwhile, the poll also found that between 6 and 13% of voters in these swing states are throwing their support behind RFK Jr. Democrats are continuing to come for RFK. A billboard truck paid for by the Democratic National Committee has been circling RFK's campaign events. Campaign manager Amaryllis Fox Kennedy told Politico that the Democrats are publicly shifting now to a strategy of actual trolling and harassment in order to place media stories around it and persuade voters in that way, because their attempts to keep Bobby off the ballot have failed.
Failure to launch the bipartisan organization No Labels, which held the goal of challenging Biden and Trump, ended its 2024 presidential bid yesterday. The group announced it will not nominate a third-party candidate this year. The organization said in a statement yesterday, No Labels has always said we would only offer our ballot line to a ticket if we could identify candidates with a credible path to winning the White House. No such candidates emerged, so the responsible course of action for us would be to stand down. Now, Amber, I think, RFK Jr. maybe not be aligned with No Labels. Also, Chris Christie was kind of flirting with them. Joe Lieberman is someone, who started this, who recently passed away. It seems that No Labels had this goal of almost being, a party, turning itself into a political party at some point by running candidates. But it seems that No Labels is really failing to do so. It seems to me that they're losing steam. They had a big presence on college campuses. I don't know if that's still the case today, but it was a few years ago when I was in graduate school. It sounds to me like they're fizzling out. What's your assessment on No Labels?
I tend to agree. I remember them first establishing a presence at Georgetown when I was an undergrad. I want to say it was in 2014 that I first saw them pop up on campus, and I haven't heard much about that since then. But I think their fundamental problem is that they misunderstand what people are actually looking for when they're looking for a third-party candidate. It's part of the reason why RFK Jr. has been so successful is because he really does cross ideological lines, and he's anti-establishment, and he's not interested in really being a part of the political elite in the way that the two-party system really props those types of people up. I mean, No Labels basically was just looking for moderates, which is not really the same thing as someone who's independent. I mean, it seems like they just wanted someone who was part of the political establishment, who kind of could be considered bipartisan. Essentially, they wanted someone who was from the uniparty. And again, that's not what is attracting people to third-party candidates. So I think they just fundamentally misunderstood exactly what it was a voter base that's looking for an alternative to Trump and Biden really wanted.
Yeah, it's like you have two offerings. You're like, you can either have orange juice or a glass of milk with your breakfast. And people are like, maybe a glass of water. Can I have water? And they're like, how about we mix together the milk and the orange juice? And it's like, that is somehow worse. That sounds repulsive. Absolutely not. The people don't want a moderate that's just a little bit of each party. And it's always the worst of each party. It's always the kind of policies where it's tax breaks for corporate profits, tax breaks for the top 4 tax brackets. And instead you have regular working people really losing out, paying higher prices, having lower wages, and in many cases paying a higher tax rate than America's biggest corporations and wealthiest people. This idea that being a moderate means being fiscally conservative in a way that's unpopular, saying, yeah, we've got to lower taxes so the economy is booming. Economy booming for who? That's the big question. What's good for big businesses, shareholders, and executives is almost always bad for small businesses, everyday working people, and consumers paying higher prices. And we've really seen that trend take off a little bit more at an accelerated pace during COVID than we've seen in the previous 20 years or even 40 years since the 70s. And so I think everyday working people want something that makes a little bit more sense for their day-to-day lives. And until these out-of-touch politicians, most of them are, get a handle on this, they don't have to understand what it's like to have Christmas on a credit card, but at least understand what the policy problem is among the population, even if you're not a part of that working population.
In addition to the economic issues that No Labels seemed to be interested in when it was courting its candidates, they also seemed to only be interested in candidates who were with the establishment on matters of foreign policy, whether it was getting more involved in sending additional money to Ukraine in its war against Russia, or continuing the Biden administration's policy in Israel, basically supporting more intervention from, of course, who else but the American working class who actually fights their wars. So yeah, I think they definitely missed the mark. Also, First Lady Jill Biden got feisty in a CBS Morning interview yesterday. She actually snapped when a reporter said, accurately, I might add, that Donald Trump is leading right now in swing states.
But when these polls, like the Wall Street Journal one, land in the White House and he's losing in all the battleground states.
No, he's not losing in all the battleground states. He's coming up, and he's even or doing better. So you know what? Once people start to focus in and they see their two choices, it's obvious that Joe will win this election.
All right.
I would like to know what polls she's looking at, Jessica, because I have to say, since at least December, January, I have not seen a single poll that shows Joe Biden even or leading in all of the swing states. Maybe I missed it. Maybe Jill Biden has a secret polling firm that she's using. But her reaction there was pretty telling. She did not even want to let that man finish his question.
Yeah, it seems to me that this is a horse race. There are some polls you'll see Trump steadily leading in states like Arizona and states like Michigan now. Some polls you'll see Biden leading in Wisconsin and Georgia, but I've never seen a situation where there's been a poll done, whether it's of registered voters or of everyone of voting age in America, that shows that clearly Joe Biden is ahead, or in all of the swing states that Trump is ahead. I don't like the horse race of, oh, this poll's ahead by 3 percentage points and it's within the margin of error, but it gets widely reported anyway. They're not really decisive at this point. I think there's a few reasons for that. One of them has been on my mind a lot this week. We have the Freedom Caucus that's kind of been a stronghold among the Republicans, as you just said, against funding for these interventionist wars, the war in Ukraine, Israel. And you had Trump recently say that he absolutely wants, a pro-Israel Secretary of State, Vice President, people in his cabinet to be pro-Israel. And that's interesting to hear. Does that mean Donald Trump is likely to fund Israel, if he gets into office? I think so. I think that's what that indicates. And so it's strange because the Freedom Caucus has been extremely pro-Trump. Do you identify some kind of division there between Trump and the Freedom Caucus, Amber?
I think that some of the Freedom Caucus members themselves are sort of maybe semi-nuanced on how they view the Israel situation. I think some of them generally consider themselves pro-Israel, but still don't think the United States should fund them. That was the position of Vivek Ramaswamy, for example, when he was still running for president for the GOP nomination. But even Trump, his tone has kind of changed on Israel in the past even just week to 2 weeks. He said recently that Israel basically needs to get it over fast, that they're losing the PR war. And he's probably going to start attacking Biden on this issue as well to try to deepen the divisions between him and the progressive base of the Democratic Party. So I definitely don't think it's as clear cut as maybe it was during his first term, where he really tried to present himself as the most pro-Israel president in history. But I think, unequivocally, Trump is better on the Ukraine issue. He said that he doesn't want to continue funding it. Viktor Orban first came out and said that last month, and Trump recently confirmed it in an interview. So at the very least, the Freedom Caucus has that clear delineation between the current regime and then former President Donald Trump. We're going to have to leave it there. We'll be back with more Rising after this.